Hello, everyone. Welcome to day two of the symposium. This is the FRC Gameday Strategy presentation by Aryan and Daniel. So please keep in mind this presentation is being recorded along with the Q&A. So please maintain your gracious professionalism while you interact with the various features here today. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Aryan and Daniel.
Okay.
Hello there.
Yep. Hello. This is Gameday Strategy presented by us too. If you want to head over to the first slide.
Yeah.
And go with that. Next. Where we said these are writers.
Okay, so welcome to our first topic. What should the team do as a whole? Okay, so keep in mind that as we go through these things, it's all building towards the long run. So things that may not seem pertinent now may be relevant later. So let's begin. First step as the team is read the rules. Reading the rules is basically one of the most important things you can do. So the rules provide a basis for just about everything, how CAD should be done, how you should build, what rules you should follow, and other such like things. Reading the rules ensures less mistakes in the long run. And as you know, fouls are really harmful on your total score. So reading the rules ensures that you have less fouls. The next step is create a dedicated drive team. Now your drive team is going to be using the robot during the actual competition. Now, your drive team is one of the most important features because it is basically the part that scores with your bot. Now, your drive team can be consisting of many types of people, but overall, it should have 3 people on your team. 1, your main driver. 2, somebody who knows how the robot operates, so maybe a programmer. And 3, somebody who will insert game pieces to your robot. Step 3 is assign the rules. Within your team, you will have many such things to do, such as CAD, building, marketing, and driving. So if you assign the rules immediately, it's easier for people to stick to one task and complete it. In the long run, this ensures efficiency and will help you. Finally, you should practice a lot. Practice means that you can start doing things faster, on time. Next slide.
Yep. Okay. Everyone on the team has a purpose in the long run, whether it's just whether you're just helping out with early scouting or you're specifically working on the robot or helping with outreach, everyone on the team has their own purpose to do. That's why it's essential to know your role before the actual competition happens, so these random things, so people don't get confused about what they have to do or just are goofing off or do something that they shouldn't be doing and instead hindering the team. So the rules listed before are solely what you should have for the competition. As stated before, this promotes efficiency and speed when doing this. Some of these rules include we have a scout team, which is comprised of the head scouts and the people who gather the info from other teams. So the info gatherers are people who go around to other pits and interview teams before the competition happens and in between games to try to figure out, who your alliance partners are, what teams, what your other robots can do, like not just yours, but the other team in general, their capabilities, and any general like strategy / planning the other teams want to do with them. You got these questions that they ask can pertain to anything about the robot, whether it's just scoring purposes, like what the robot can do, any strategies they have, any other capabilities that they haven't tested, and then the head scout gatherers should report to in the end. This person collect the information and groups it together into different categories, into the scanning up whatever each team decides to use. Next up, we have programming team, which we have the programming lead and the whole team itself. So these people generally know about the robot, what it can do in terms of movement and what it's programmed. So these people are there to help in case the robot stops working, in case you need to make some changes in between matches, or just in general programming, because that's what makes the backbone of the robot allow it to work. So next we have the drive team, who we had mentioned earlier, are the ones who normally are the ones who are going to be going out to drive the robot itself. So you definitely want people from each team, at least one of each, one builder, one driver, one programmer on each team, to help you drive the robot, have it up there. But you have up to 6 people that can be. You want to have at least 6 people who are capable of driving it and knowing how to like control it. So because if you, in case like one person doesn't show up or they get sick or you need to make changes, it's always good to have backups of each person, of each team member, to know, you know, in case like anything goes wrong, in case you need to make some changes or adjustments, you know, that kind of stuff. And lastly, we have build team, which they're your multitask force. They build a robot, they can fix it. If your build team is large, you can segment them into smaller groups of people that can focus on specific tasks, or they can help be divided into the other groups. Next slide.
So now look on the screen. The first thing you will see is a really complicated graph. So let me boil it down to the basics. Now, in order to promote efficiency and strategy, you need to have order. It's the first step to anything. So boil it down to the basic, you will have your president be the head person. They will control your heads of other teams, such as your driver, scout leader, program leader, and build leader. And each of these will be in control of their own groups, such as the drive team, scout team, program team, and build team. Now, the graph you see is how each of the teams interact. Now, your main team will be known as the crew. The crew listens to just about any heads person you see here or guild leaders. So your build team will listen to the scout leader and the build leader, but not necessarily the program team, depending on how you use them. So it may seem like a stretch, but team order is the first and foremost step to strategy. You have your job and you know what to do, which makes it easier to do. This allows communication at faster speeds, and FRC competition, information is king. The more you know, the better off you will be. For example, let's take your scout subsystem right here. The scout crew goes around different teams and gains the information. It sends it back to the scout leader, who distributes it among the driver, program leader, and build leader. Finally, these three, your program leader, build leader, and driver, will sort through the information and send it to the president, who will then see what to do with it. Now, this ensures everybody on your team is caught up to speed. In the end, it helps with efficiency and later on build up your strategy. On the subject of leaders, it may become to question, how do you choose them? Well, this is fairly straightforward. You want to choose somebody with experience, dedication, and namely people skills. If they can control a group of people, you will be better off with that leader. A person that knows what they're doing can lead the subsection, and people skills are necessary to teach new members what to do. Now, the system you see here is not necessarily a to-do. There are many different types of subsystems. You can change it up as you want. It's best to have all this set up again before the competition. This ensures everybody can practice what they need to do, as we said before.
Yes, practice. Practicing is honestly key for everything you need to do. You don't want to come into the competition never having driven your robot, never having tested your robot for any kinks, anything that randomly might pop up, any bugs. Honestly, you just need to practice every aspect of it. Make sure your team is comfortable doing what they're doing. Make you know what to do. Like, make sure programmers know if they're comfortable on the fly changing stuff, being able to just be in the pits, just ready to fix any bugs. Make sure your build team is ready to, you know, rebuild the robot in case something happens, something breaks. Because honestly, it happens to all of our teams. Like, bumpers may fall off, what if some screws come out loose? All these things could affect your robot. So you need to be ready, have practice. You need to be ready for what's going to happen. So this is the next section is about specific game day strategy, is about what you do during the actual competition itself. Depending on, yep. Next up.
Okay.
Yes.
So welcome to the scout team. So the main division, as you can see here, is they start scouting other teams as soon as possible and gather up all the data on preferred scouting systems. So now each of these, as you see in the graph, have their own thing. So first step should be create the scout system and scouting method. Now the reason being is that it organizes the team into certain sections. Now, if you have certain sections, you can do different things, like one of your scout teams maybe gathers information on the bot while others gather information on alliances and so on and so forth. Now, how to determine people that should be scouts? Well, most of the time it's up to volunteering work. You can either volunteer, but if you don't have any, you should create one with people who have good talking skills. The better they come off as good speakers, the more the alliance will remember you, and in the long run, you'll be able to create better alliances with other teams. So the next part is your scout team. So this determines who will go around and ask other teams for information, and this increases the efficiency by 100-fold. Now, it's better to have scout teams of at least like 5 to 6 people, because at competitions, you will have roughly 30 to 40 teams there present. So each person gets about 8 teams, and you can always compare and contrast. Next up, so how to determine these people? Again, they're people who are not afraid to ask questions. Okay, so next you'll have your scout leader. Your scout leader is like the bridge between leadership roles and your normal crew. So they'll organize the information sent to other people, things like that. So it determines who's going to organize the team section and just promotes order. And then how to determine your scout. Now, if you're on a new team, you want to choose somebody who seems like they know what they're doing. There's no other way to choose. But if you're an experienced and seasoned team, the best way is to choose by community. If the person has done something like this before, it'll work out in the long run.
Okay. Next up. Yep. Next up, we have Oreo, the acronym right here. It's not necessarily the greatest acronym for stuff, and this could always be changed. But as soon as the game is announced, you definitely want to spend time, at least during the first week and stuff, just creating a method of communication between everyone. Make sure everyone understands what happened, what the game is about, what aspects of the game. So this communication system right here on the left, Oreo, is a method of communicating with your drive team perfectly between each group of people. So like, first of all, organization, ready team members, these are stuff you want to have always. Like, always be organized. You don't want to lose your parts. You don't want to just randomly be out there and just realize, oh no, we left our toolkit at home or whatever. You want to have ready team members. These people want to be ready. You want them to always be on the go, be ready to fill in for anything. Efficiency, of course, it's efficiency. Like, you definitely want to be the most efficient thing you can be. And then after all, and then lastly, you want to have an overall feeling of accomplishment after all you've done with your robot, because it's literally going to be your prize possession weeks of the competition, then some. So just, you want to feel good about your robot and your team. Then before the competition happens, you definitely want to do trial runs of each thing. Practice the event if you can. Go to a makerspace. Go to a DE field. Just go anywhere that you can to practice it, even if your school doesn't have necessarily the materials or the ability to recreate a field. Do your best to try to mock the field, because you don't want to come in blindly and then realize, oh no, your climber, like this year, oh no, your climber didn't work because you guys didn't practice it enough. You definitely want to practice it. Practice. Test each subsystem. Basically, test each system. But your programming, you definitely want to make sure there are no bugs. Your drivers, you want to make sure they can drive perfectly. Scouting team, you want to practice. Make a mock version of the competition, whether you're using members of your own team or just using, using your friends and stuff who are helping out right now. Just practice with each team so you know what to do. And then if any problems arise, fix them as soon as you can. Yep.
And this is where the contingency plans come in.
Yes. Yep, the biggest thing, make sure to have spare parts. You don't want to just be exactly what you need in case, again, like I mentioned earlier, your robot fails and you have to replace some parts. Like, say, on wood, your motors burn out. I've had that problem before. You definitely want to have spare everything in case in between rounds you need to replace a part, you need to change it, you need to fix it. Have spare parts for everything, whether it's just minor stuff like screws or big things like zip ties and wires. Fix everything. You don't want to be exactly. Two, if something happens, if you have an issue, you want to identify the issue firstly instead of pinning it on others. That is one of the worst things you can do ever. Literally, do not start arguing with your team. That will not end up well. Just work with your team to identify the issue and don't blame others. Just accept that the issue happened and let it be. Just fix it as soon as you can together. And then three, say your leads are gone. Make sure your team knows what to do. Even those who don't do much on the team and decide to are just there to be there, make sure they know what to do because you want to work together. FRC it's key to work together. You want everyone to be together, everyone to work together instead of having people to not know stuff. Okay, next slide.
Okay, welcome to our third segment of the presentation, playoff strategy. Now, playoff strategy is where everything comes together. This is your one final test. This is your midterm, your AP exam, anything like that. So now the most important parts of strategy occur here. What you did, what you're prepared for, what you can do, and what you need to improvise. Now, before we go on, if you have questions, this is the time. So we'll spend about 5-ish minutes on questions.
Yeah, all the attendees, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A so the presenters can answer them. It appears as there are no questions.
Okay then, we shall continue on. Welcome to Setup Systems. Now, this is your entire scout team, how your entire team communicates, all of that good stuff. So the first part of the SUS setup is to check everything. It doesn't matter what it is, just go over to see if it works, because if it doesn't, you're going to be in some trouble, to say the least. Now, create a checklist of the important things, like does your robot work? Is it functioning? Are all the parts of the robot secure? Is anything loose? Do the bumpers cover regulation? Are they likely to fall off? All those good things. Another thing you should probably do is check your supplies and see if people can communicate. So things like these will inevitably save you time and make you more efficient. and allow you to get things quickly. Now, about this, it's not all work. Now, if you do things quickly, you can enjoy the event faster and more without having to worry too much. So it's easier to concentrate on more important things and then enjoy things later. Next slide.
Okay, so next up we have valuation time, which comes after you've set up everything you have. So when you're on playoffs, make evaluation. The first thing, what's the best way to accomplish the strategy you've been going for so long? This is where this comes in handy. You definitely want to check what your team has in terms of what question. What does your bot do? Why is it useful to the other teams? Teams often will determine how good of a fit your team is on an alliance based on one, what you can answer, two, what they have seen from the competition, and three, what you can put up for them, what you can offer them, whether you're the alliance captain or you've been third, second, or third on the alliance. Doesn't matter. You're all together on an alliance. Next up, the next thing you want to evaluate is what the other teams can do. So as much as this is more of an optional question, you definitely want to know what each of the other teams can do. For example, this year with the canceled infinite recharge, you want to see teams that can do shooter from whether they can do, from the low point, the high point, and then all the way in the back, whether that they have a good shooter, whether they can climb, they can do trenches, they can do Wheel of Fortune. You want to know what each team can do because remember, they're your partners. They are in there with you this whole time. Try to help you understand, to help you try to, all of you guys try to get further on in there. So this question mainly applies to, if you made playoffs, but even if you didn't, this is still a good thing to evaluate in between rounds or in between the first, in between after each match, before each match. Talk to the other teams about what they can do because oftentimes you can figure out what kind of team you're dealing with by how they respond to the questions and how they prepare for the game itself. A detailed response indicates that a team is prepared. And that's the sort of team you want in the alliance. You don't want someone that gives you a half-hearted answer, like, oh, I don't know. We can probably shoot like lower hatch. We can probably do, maybe Wheel of Fortune. Well, instead, you want to hear confidence in their answer. You want to hear them give you a detailed response instead of just, half-heartedly not caring about what they are. That does not make a good team. Finally, how do other teams affect your team? How do their strategies fit in with yours? How do they clash with yours? Are there anything you can do to, make adjustments? You're not going to be the only team that has strategies, so you need to think a few steps ahead. It's almost like chess. If you move the queen, how will the bishop and knight fit into the board itself, into your strategy? How can it both help you if they attack the opponent at the same time? If you can answer these questions, you can pull ahead greatly. The whole point of this strategy is to think of a plan, have its contingencies, and you can expect it to fail somewhere along the way. But then, in the end, a good team knows how to adjust and adapt on the go if changes need to happen. There's no one true strategy to help win the event. Each team, each alliance does it differently, and that's the best part about this. There is no whole secret strategy to winning.
Okay, next slide. So this is your day one competition. Oftentimes, FRC competitions will span over the course of 2 or 3 days. You might spend the first day, Friday, preparing your materials, getting them to the competition site. But on the second day, at the end, you need to ask yourself these questions. So now, before you all jump in a word, just take a breath. We've got a checklist, and this is meant to help you, not tell you what to do. These questions are mainly here to help you guide you along. You can ask your own questions, your own things to do. This is just the first step you need to take. So the first question, was your team productive? This is more straightforward. If you feel a sense of accomplishment in Oreo, then you probably did well. It doesn't matter if you won or lost. If you feel like you did something and you affected it, you probably did it right. So if your team stayed on task and finished almost all of them that you set out to do, you can consider it productive. If all your materials are there, if your bot actually performed, you can consider it productive. Now, your sense of accomplishment isn't solely based on whether you win or lose, it's whether what you did mattered. So, next question, do you have all of your necessary information? By this, we mean to ask, has the information from the scouts been analyzed enough that you know everything? Not necessarily everything, but more the important details, what each team's strengths are, how they fit with yours. Now, this is one of the things your drive team especially needs to know so they can prepare in advance. So this is, again, fairly straightforward. Next team. Have you scouted all possible alliances? Now, this isn't really more necessary. You don't have to scout all of them on the first day, but it's just recommended that you do, since you need to sort through information, figure out which strategies fit in with your own. Again, if they clash, you're probably not going to score as many points as you should. Finally, are all of your materials there? This is one of their most important. If you loaned out some parts to other teams, did you get it back? If they loaned some parts to you, did they get their own parts back? Is your robot there? Are all the parts of your robot there? Do you have extra batteries? Things like that. All your things should be there. And finally, your most important question of the day. Has your robot performed well? You interpret this question as you wish. If you feel like it did well, it scored points, good for you. If you feel that it did bad, ask yourself why. What trait during the season made it that it didn't perform well? Isolate your variables. Was it your drive team? Was it build team? Things like that. So, again, if you did well, ask yourself why. What's the trait? In either scenario, ask yourself what made it good and what made it bad, and then figure out how to use it next year. So, your next slide.
Yep. Okay, so now we have day two's checklist, which day two is different than day one. Day two is more for reflection day as you guys continue on with your competition. Day two is when you want, as much as day one has the majority of the competition, day two is your last chances at making playoffs. They're your best chances of adapting better. You have the whole time. You have more time now, day two, since you had already participated in quite a bit of the competition already. You'll be able to reflect back and adapt as need be. So, first question there, was the team productive? This one, okay, it's straightforward. If you have a sense of accomplishment, whether or not the day went well, you can consider it productive. Whether it doesn't matter whether you're first place or whether you're last, as long as you guys improved along the way and you got your goals accomplished, that's the most important thing about this. You want to feel accomplished. You want to have your team's goals. On a more basic level, if your team stayed on task and finished almost all the tasks you set out to do, then you can consider it to be productive. Ask around and see what everyone did. This also helps to single out the people who are, the slackers of the team, those who don't do their job. As much as you can already tell who's that person within just the regular old meetings, this is another important part. You want everyone to be participating in one way or another. It tells you that you need to find a way to deal with these people. Much of strategy is what happens in the long run. So if you fix this as soon as possible, you will be able to create a stronger strategy. Second question, how well did your team perform? You can interpret this in any way you want, whether it's just asking, whether it's just points wise, it's in terms of how well your robot has accomplished its goals. You don't have to aim to be the number one team in each one. Like, that's an unrealistic one. As much as like it's a dream goal, more realistically, you want to focus on the smaller things. You want to focus on each on the game modes itself. Like, whether it's, did your robot perform well? Like, why did it make, so like, say your goal was to try to do shooter. Did your robot how proficient was your robot in shooting at, whether, it's the low or medium goal in comparison to the high? It's like, ask yourself why and what made this trait that way. If it performed well, if it performed a bit worse, ask yourself again, why did it do that? What can you do to fix it? Why was that made that way? Isolating each problem, each thing at a time will allow you to better reflect back to it in the end, and and also better reflect in the future, like how to improve, whether it's at the next competition, next year, etc. Next, did everyone do what was needed? Again, this one's basically straightforward. Did everyone complete their tasks? If not, reflect on that. Reflect on what you can do, what you can change, why they did not do the task, who didn't do what they were supposed to do. Try to single out each variable until you figure out the solution. Because in the end, what matters is that your team acted as a good team. Along with the next one, was professionalism maintained? The impression that your team makes on other people matters more than you think. In the future, if you act respectfully, teams will remember you and be more open to you. If you are a good teammate, if you're a good partner, you have better chances of making playoff alliance more. This grants more opportunities to make a lasting alliance. And two, it's a great way to just make friendships and just alliances between teams. Like, say you and your rival team are friends or close enough that you can go, like, say you don't have a specific tool, you can go over to them and ask them for a tool, ask them to borrow, ask them to help. That's what we all are here for, to help each other become a better person. Anything you might be missing, another team can lend you. However, if you act more like a fool, you aren't a good teammate, that'll make them less likely to help you, or they'll avoid you even more. Finally, consider what you can change, what you can make improvements on in the next step. This is all but the first step of improvement, but it's the first thing. It's the biggest thing you want to do. Just figure out what you can change in improvement. There's always going to be something you improve. No team is perfect. Well, we hope you learned something from this slide. Literally, keep these things in mind. Keep always when you're doing any checklist. Any other comments you want to make, Aryan?
I think we're done here on this slide. So now if you have any questions, now is the time to ask them. Let's see.
So a quick time check. You guys got about 30 minutes left in the session, and you do have a question. Do
Okay.
you have any recommendations for very large teams?
We do actually have recommendations for large teams. So, what specifically do you want? How do you organize your team, or how you should operate?
Let's see, because operations and how to make teams
more efficient. Okay.
Okay.
So for
your team.
yeah, subdivide your team. That is the most efficient way. Okay. So we're gonna go to systems. So you see this slide again. This will make your team a bit more efficient if you just subdivide them. So let's say you have a team of 50 people. So you want at least 7 leadership roles. You have your main president, as you see here, and then you have your build leader, program scout, driver, and then any other 2 people that you want to elect. So after that, you could just split people among build, program, and scout team. So after that, it just depends. If you want to see what people fit where, best way to do is make a form and let them fill out their interests. Based on that, you can sort people. Other than that, there isn't really much to operation. Most of it depends on how the synergy between your teammates work. How do they best interact? Based on that, you can create specific subdivisions. Other than that, that's about it.
So any more questions for our presenters here?
Another thing I want to point out, even if teams don't work, you're gonna eventually, through trial and error, you're gonna find a way that your team works well. I know for my team, we struggled the first year with, putting each people on teams because as a rookie team, my team didn't know much about, what each group was like. So it was like a trial and error process. You want to figure out what works well. Like what Aryan said was true. Having that amount of people, having the different subsystem works, but you also want to figure out what each person has interest in and how to put them best in a team, because you don't want people who aren't going to be dedicated to what they're doing, what they want to do. So you want people put on these teams that they're going to do the work there. Even if it is a learning process, you definitely want to put them into smaller groups. And because the larger the group is, the higher chance you have of people slacking off and then causing the group to, get distracted or slack off as well. So you want people focused. You want to have the leaders be able to keep each other individual teams in check. You also want a good way to have them communicate with each other, because as much as like these individual teams work well by themselves, there are always overlaps. Like you want your programmers to know what your electrical team can do. You want to know what your build team and scouts, and build team and drive. You want all these guys interconnected, knowing what each other can do, how to help each other in order to, best suit their needs, as well as make your team a better team in general.
All right, do we have any specific questions?
Any questions for our presenters?
It doesn't appear right now.
Does not appear. All right. So
Okay,
do you guys want to end the session then, or?
yeah, we'll end the session.
Yeah.
Thank
Alright.
you all for listening to our presentation. We hope you learned something. Just remember all these things and have a good day.
All right. So thank you again for everyone who attended this session. Thank you to Daniel and Aryan for their presentation. Please keep in mind that the next session will be starting at 11:15 a.m. So please do ensure that you go to those sessions the rest of the day.